On this 30th anniversary of the martyrdom of Jean Viernes and Selma Domingo, this week in Seattle, it is good to commemorate and recommit ourselves to their struggle against the Marcos dictatorship by, as Lilo Chairman Nemesio Domingo said in his invitation to these annual commemoration events, linking us back to the work to preserve and deepen the Filipino people's and the Filipino nation's memory of the reign of the Marcos dictatorship and to broaden the post-Marcos democratic space. As Jeline narrated, I became an activist as a 15-year-old sophomore high school student, so inspired by a symposium of the Nuclear Free Philippines Coalition that Mommy brought me to that summer, that I organized the Nuclear Disarmament Group in St. Scholastica's College, Manila, the following school year. It was 1981, 30 years ago, the same year that Jean Viernes and Selma Domingo were murdered in the dying years of the Marcos dictatorship. In the following years, as I was growing up in the YS, the Youth and Student Movement, I heard murmurs about two labor and anti-Marcos leaders who had been assassinated in the States, but never even learned their names. So I was so touched to be contacted by Lilo through Jeline earlier this year in Manila to learn that you had been commemorating their deaths and their abiding life's work all these years, to learn their names and their stories, and to be invited with Walden to be a guest at these commemoration events. Memory is an essential element in post-authoritarian democratic transitions, as campaigns like the GZO Peace Institute's Memory, Truth-Telling, and the Pursuit of Justice assert. We must remember, never forget, what happened to us during the dictatorship, so that we may honor those who fought and fell during the night, and those who lived and remained faithful to the struggle. Correct our mistakes, complete unfinished tasks, and fill our gaps in uprooting the remnants of authoritarianism. We must tell the stories of that time to lay accountabilities where they lie, and to teach our children, never again, to form in them a democratic political culture and a culture of active citizenship. We must pursue justice to bring genuine closure to the victims and survivors, and to once and for all cut the impunity of those who impede the broadening of political democracy and the deepening of social and economic democracy in the Philippines. With the snap elections of 1986, the civil disobedience campaign that condemned the fraud, and the EDSA People Power Revolution, and of course, all the years of anti-dictatorship struggle that built up to those. As Nathan Kimpo says in Contested Democracy and the Left in the Philippines After Marcos, the Philippines became part of the so-called third wave of democratization in the late 20th century. It opened up the democratic space in the country, returned us to the democratization process that, by no means completed after decades of struggle against elite rule, had been traumatically aborted by the declaration of martial law, and resumed the era of what Nathan calls contested democracy, in which we are all still enmeshed protagonists. Nathan describes the Philippine left, which consists of various communist, socialist, and social democratic movements, parties, groups, and currents, as virtually the only organized political force that has long challenged elite domination of the country's political system. After the Katipunan, from the time of the first communist and socialist parties and the first labor movement during the American colonial administration, to the hukbong mapagpalaya ng bayan during the agrarian uprising in the 1930s, to the hukbong bayan laban sa mga Hapon during World War II, to the nationalist movement and the time of the Filipino First policy from the late 1940s until the 1960s, to the anti-dictatorship struggle during martial law, up to the People Power EDSA revolution, to the present, the left has been posing alternative visions of society, the nation, the economy, and the political system, and challenged the primacy of capital, colonization and occupation, and landlord domination, as well as more recently, sexism and patriarchy, and ecological destruction. Nathan goes on to narrate, over the past decade or so, new leftist parties and groups have emerged and they are now coming to the fore. This is one such story. And Walden also narrated this last night. Coming from different political blocs, basic sectors, and social movements and regions, we began organizing Akbayan in 1994. After helping pass the Party List Act in 1997, we founded, registered, and first ran Akbayan in the first party list election in 1998 and won our first seat in the House of Representatives. We also began running in local elections that year. We won 2 seats in 2001, then the maximum of 3 in 2004. We helped pass human rights and labor laws and such other laws as the Quality Affordable Medicines Act and the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program Extension with Reforms Act, and our authoring measures such as bills for overseas Filipinos, the Reproductive Health Bill, and the National Land Use Bill. We filed resolutions investigating different burning issues, debated the General Appropriations Act every year, and impeached or tried to impeach a president and an ombudsman. We participated in the EDSA DOS, which ousted former President Estrada in 2001, turned opposition against former President Macapagal Arroyo with the revelation of the Hello Garci fraud in 2005, resisted the declaration of the state of emergency in 2006, and coalesced with the Liberal Party to support President Noy and run a guest candidate for the Senate last year. All these while building Akbayan as a parliamentary party and at the same time remaining a mass movement party. Nathan, flowing from the first argument, the second part of my argument is that the deepening of democracy in the Philippines mainly involves the transformation of an elite-dominated formal democracy into a participatory and egalitarian one, a process that cannot but consist of intense social contestation. Nathan's first argument is the Philippines is a contested democracy in which the elite and the trapos, or traditional politicians, trapo is also the Filipino word for a rag that we use to clean up dirt. The elite and the trapos strive to maintain a formal democracy with so-called free and fair elections that they can easily manipulate and dominate, and in which large sections of the poor and marginalized classes, sectors and communities, and some sections of the middle and upper classes as well, work and fight for a participatory and egalitarian democracy. So Nathan's second part of his argument is that the deepening of democracy in the Philippines cannot but consist of intense social contestation as we fight to transform this elite-dominated formal democracy into a participatory and egalitarian one. This contestation is over many public goods: active citizenship, electoral enfranchisement, political representation, public accountability, pushing the limits of institutions to radicalize them and make them more responsive to the needs of citizens, especially the demands of the poor and powerless, mobilizing the state and civil society to push radical reforms, and challenging the private sector to support them. So, political democracy is not just a victory for civil and political rights activists, it is a victory of all social justice activists, including socialists, because it empowers the citizens and reforms the state for further efforts to make society more equitable and just. Nathan, the deepening of democracy, as in the transition to democracy, involves contestation, especially among different classes and class coalitions. And of course, with those public goods at stake, it cannot but be that conflictual and dynamic between these different classes and class coalitions. The traditional and new elites realized that during and soon after each EDSA People Power event and moved quickly to abort that the process could broaden and deepen towards more comprehensive changes of our society in the Philippines. And all of us in this room, even the young people who give us so much hope because they are as at least curious about this tradition that they have been born into. All of us in this room are witnesses to these characteristics of our mass movement, which continuously surprises us, not only surprises the powers that be that we go up against, and enables us to learn from our mistakes, to remain faithful to an original vision, and to seek to adjust the way that we communicate this to the world around us. And I'm not only speaking here of Akbayan's relationship with the extreme left in the Philippines, with whom we have a very difficult relationship, but also other left parties and forces that emerged from that and other parallel traditions and are seeking to reinvent the left in the Philippines. And that elusive goal is something that we have not given up on. And for the most hard-headed among us, we still cherish that dream of the broadest left unity in the Philippines. Perhaps no longer in our lifetime, but perhaps in the lifetime of our children. Walden has already narrated to you the major elements of Akbayan's sensing of this first year of the Aquino administration, in which we are a junior coalition partner. And the sort of working title we have given this is the rough and rugged road toward change, Akbayan Party on the first year of the Aquino government. And he already described to us the stains of the past, Arroyo's decade of corrupt and ineffective governance, and the way that we characterize this first year of the Aquino administration. Planting the seeds of change, winning important battles. He scanned the areas of anti-corruption and political reforms, foreign policy, and addressing the immediate needs of the poor in faithfulness to the campaign slogan of kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap. If there's no corruption, there won't be poverty. And most importantly, he shared with you what we feel are the many tasks that remain. The social contract to broaden and deepen reforms, spanning the prosecution of the corrupt and recovery of ill-gotten wealth, protection of human rights, political modernity, economic development, agrarian reform and justice, the urban poor. We could also add fisheries reform, a minerals management bill that will be an alternative mining law and a partner to the total log ban, students' rights and welfare, the reform and empowerment of the Sangguniang Kabataan or the Youth Council, the anti-discrimination bill with the LGBT community, and the issue of elderly poor pension. And he also included among what is to be done, universal health care. So in addition to RH, addressing the hidden but growing epidemic of HIV and AIDS, and working with persons with disabilities for accessibility and their other needs. And he pointed out to us what we see are the challenges not only for the administration, not only for a junior coalition partner like Akbayan, but Filipino citizens, challenges beyond the first year. Lastly, may I just share with you how provocative it has been for us in Akbayan to learn the recent events concerning Jose Antonio Vargas. How he was inspired by young people and students, in turn now affirming the actions he himself has taken, but their initial efforts about the DREAM Act, and now his initiative, which they have called Define American. Provocative for us because here is another Filipino, a Filipino-American, who has come clean about himself and has used his prominence or his exposure to leverage not just for himself, not just for his family, but for all people who are in the same situation and desiring similar reform. So leveraging his position right now for in the interest of immigration reforms. And it's one of our feelings in Akbayan that it is that same sense of boldness, the accustomed boldness of CAMD and KPD and Lilo, the boldness which is part of the legacy of Silme Domingo and Jean Viernes, which wed to our desire to remain faithful to the visions that first inspired us, that first moved us to choose this way of life, wed to intellectual rigor that comrades like Walden contribute so much towards, wed to the sense of community and comradeship in our movement, will continue to guide us along this not easy, this often difficult and very conflictual, but the path that we have chosen and the path that we love. So again, maraming salamat for inviting us to be part of these commemoration activities. Mabuhay ang demokratikong kaliwa, mabuhay si Inang Bayan.